Hey everyone, hope everyone is doing well. This is James bringing you another review. I am back after a pretty long hiatus, so my apologies. I have been watching a lot of movies. In the meantime, I did a trip to Europe too, so I just kind of got out of the habit of making these videos, but I appreciate everyone following. I did hear quite a lot of feedback actually while I was gone for such a small channel as this one. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed and commented. I definitely have more subscribers than I did from my last video, so thank you again. And if you do like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Gonna try to put a little more effort into these videos too. I do have something coming up where we'll be busy in a little bit, but I wanted to do a handful of videos here. So today I am going to be talking about maybe not a top tier poliziotteschi, but I think one well worth your time, and I think a very good one done by one of the kind of trademark directors of the poliziotteschi genre, and that is Enzo G Castellari's Heroin Busters. So quick synopsis on this one. Two cops, one undercover, are basically tracking down an international drug syndicate. It's called Heroin Busters, so it's a heroin ring. This is a really fun one, and it was basically inspired by kind of this Arrow set that I recently picked up. And to be honest, I picked this up mainly for the other film on that set, and that is The Big Racket, also starring the great Fabio Testi, as does this film. And that, for me, is one of my kind of landmark, canonical poliziotteschi films, Eurocrime films. One of the top 3 or 4, I would definitely say, and in my opinion, Enzo Castellari's best. I do like a couple of his other films quite a bit. In fact, I think most poliziotteschi to do are definitely worth checking out. Heroin Busters is one that, because I had the set, I was like, well, I've watched Big Racket quite a few times. Quite a number of times, and I only watched the Heroin Busters a few years ago. I did enjoy it at the time, but I kind of dismissed it as a little bit more minor as far as those goes, and it's really, really a great time. And for me, at least, I have been watching a lot of films still, but I've been kind of, bouncing around. People that are fans of kind of Italian genre cinema undoubtedly like a lot of cinema in general too. So for me, at least, I had really been diving into kind of Hong Kong films and things like that from the 80s, 70s too, but mostly the 80s. That's a set of film that I would highly recommend anyone that's a fan of kind of Italian genre films to check out too. They have their set of films that are going to go really, really hard, Category 3 films too, that are definitely very exploitation. And they also have their action. Of course, everyone knows kind of the Jackie Chan style action, but they have films that go very, very hard too. I'd recommend Long Arm of the Law if you're into kind of like that social realism, very gritty violence. If you're a fan of poliziotteschi, I think that's probably the one I would recommend. And those films, sort of like the Gialli and poliziotteschi, are kind of getting restored by a lot of the same companies, so like Arrow, Blu-ray, and things like that. So quick shout out that's a little bit of an aside, but definitely a hard recommend if you have never checked out those films too. Got lost there for a second. Why should you watch this film? I think, in my opinion, this film has an absolutely fantastic third act. Pretty much the last 40 minutes of this film is one long chase scene where we are using every form of transportation. We're going into like these newly constructed subways. There's even a plane chase at the end. We have motorcycle stunts, and the Italians during this era were just really, really great at that. So I think that's one of the other reasons. It has, of course, your great Italian settings. We're kind of going all over the place. We get to go, in fact, to a bunch of different countries and things like that. But these European settings during the 1970s are just my absolute favorite settings as far as where to put a crime thriller. So you have that going for it. And not to mention, you have a Goblin score. What else did Goblin score around this period? You have Deep Red 1975, which is really the breakout. Suspiria the year before this. And then Dawn of the Dead, I think the same year, and then Tenebrae was their next score. So of all those, this is definitely the least noticed score, but it's an absolutely kick-ass score, and it's awesome. In particular, I think one highlight, in addition to the last 40 minutes, is definitely the first 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes are, we're opening with very, very wordless, but the soundtrack's banging, and it's just a great way. It really, really brought me back right into kind of these Italian genre cinema of the 1970s, and it's just awesome. I just love it. It just starts so well. In many ways, this is a very simple movie. That synopsis I just wrote that up real fast. I think in a lot of ways that plays to Enzo Castellari's strengths. Well, this film is definitely taken from kind of like the social issues of the time, specifically kind of heroin. Definitely inspired by the French Connection, which is also kind of about this heroin ring. I think for the most part it's a very simple film. You have basically these two cops trying to bust the ring, and I think Castellari's strengths, unlike a couple of the other big directors of Poliziotteschi's like Damiani or De Leo, I think he's less good at kind of like these social issues, and he doesn't quite have the same sort of attention to detail. But his strengths are really in his stylishness and just being able to really choreograph and coordinate some fantastic action. And this film has a lot of it. It's particularly backloaded, so I do understand why some people would complain. I think you could probably tighten this film up just a little bit in that kind of middle section, and it'd probably be a little bit of a better film. But when this film is hitting on the action, it's just really great. Castellari is fantastic at staging and just having just a really diverse array of action. And that's one of the reasons why I would say he's definitely one of the most kind of Hong Kong-y directors, because those are many ways that Hong Kong directors really excel too, specifically on stunts and things like that. And I think Castellari is probably kind of the best kind of stunt-oriented director of this period of Italian genre film. And it's interesting just to see, because a lot of these directors, they didn't work in just one genre or the other. People like Dario Argento or Sergio Leone are very much kind of the exception to that. They worked in a lot of different genres. They bounced around. And I think Castellari in particular is very well suited towards Poliziotteschi's and a little bit towards the Westerns too. I think Chioma is a really one of the best spaghetti Westerns, for me at least, top 10 or so. I think replayability wise, this film is really good once you kind of know what it is and what it isn't. This is not a film that's going to bring like a great subtext or make you learn something about the heroin industry. It's bad. It's shown pretty simply. We get some needles and things like that, but I think really the reason to watch this film is the spectacular stylish action. And Castellari, kind of like in that same Peckinpah John Woo thing, he goes to slow-mo. He knows when to slow the camera down, and there's just some absolutely great shots here. And that's one of the things I also like about these kind of Italian genre films too, is like sometimes the cinematography is just absolutely world-class for these stories that are absolutely B-level pulpiness. And I say that in like the kindest possible way, because I love those stories. That's most of what I watch. That's most of what I want to watch. It's like, would I rather watch that or a kind of Italian arty film from the 40s or 50s? Almost always I'm going to be choosing kind of these more exploitation or genre-oriented cinema from the 70s and the 80s. And I think this film very much is that. There's also just a great flair to these things, where you have like these small details where it's just like the random pedestrians or stuff are giving each other shit, they're stealing stuff, and it's just like this Italian flair that really is just present in this era. There's like people giving you shit. The apartment design is great. You have a lot of familiar faces, people like Romano Pupo, Massimo Vanni. It's just really, really wonderful to get kind of back into the group. And I think this film is just a really, really good summation of Enzo Castellari's strengths as a director. A lot of what I was just talking about earlier, I think in particular the last action scene is really, really phenomenal. And there's just a lot of like small little touches that Castellari does that just sort of punctuate the action. And for me, I just get a lot of joys out of that. So for instance, we have like this pipe that they're moving around. And so Testi's character at one point gets like the idea to kind of shoot through the pipe. We have this shot where he's kind of going down like this little, I don't even know, like this little cart at the construction site. And there's like this kind of improvisational feel to it where they're just like, oh, did you see that this subway is under construction or this freeway is under construction? Let's use that for our set and our chase scene. So we have, like, of course, a very celebrated shot of, and completely ridiculously absurd shot of Fabio Testi riding down the escalator and then popping off, shooting a guy while he kind of lands at the very base. And it's just a very simple, very short sequence, but those are the reasons that I absolutely kind of adore parts of this film. There's some great lighting and the tunnel sets and things like that. You have your set of kind of great bike stunts. I think, and I'm popping around a lot, but that last action sequence is really just like a lot of stuff just strung onto each other. You can tell that Castellari just wanted to feature all kinds of stuff. We have like the this big stage that we have kind of the shootout where he takes out another one of the villains. There's like this great shot where one of the bikes just gets shot. Bikers get shot and just goes flying in slow-mo, and it's just framed really, really beautifully. And the craftsmanship and things like that on this are very top-notch, and you can tell a lot of love and thought and interest went into kind of framing that way. If I have one complaint about the last finals fight scene is the air finale where we have kind of these planes chasing each other. I mean, they really did toss everything at this. And you actually do have Fabio Testi flying that plane, which is kind of incredible. I think it's a little underwhelming. I think kind of plane stuff, sort of like underwater stuff, is very, very hard to do well. And I think this film, unfortunately, is no exception. I think it's okay. I just don't think it's quite sort of the action set piece that you would have chosen to punctuate this. Things like the escalator shot or kind of the bike stunts that are happening where they just had like a bunch of really incredible bikers that are willing to bike down anything. I think those are a little bit better and a little more thrilling as far as that goes. As far as the cast goes, we have two main leads here. Fabio Testi, who apparently chose his own wardrobe, according to Castellari, and that apparently composed a lot of denim. I think he was partly inspired sort of by the Serpico Al Pacino, who looks very different from Testi, but just a lot of that kind of like jean jacket, wardrobe sort of thing. You also have David Hemmings basically playing the Maurizio Merli character here, like the tough cop. He has a little bit less to do than Fabio Testi. He doesn't really look like an action star. I do like David Hemmings. I think he might be slightly miscast here. That being said, I don't think he really detracts from the film. I think Fabio Testi probably stands out a little bit more. I think he's probably has to have been given maybe twice the amount of screen time here. So yeah, I think this is, while this might not be Castellari's best Poliziotteschi film or anything, I think it's one I can wholeheartedly recommend. I think it's one that could probably be just tightened a little bit and it would improve quite a bit. So yeah, I would definitely recommend people pick up this Arrow box set. I think in particular the Big Racket is just a top-notch Poliziotteschi film. In terms of who won, I will give it to Castellari. I think the action in here is really, really good and just really enjoyable. Rating-wise, I will give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's solid, and I will happily rewatch this. So yeah, let me know what you think of Heroin Busters. Let me know what you think of Big Racket. If you wanted to hear me talk more about Big Racket, I did a podcast with Iñaki a couple of years ago on that. So you can check out the Film to Film podcast where we talked about that film. Yeah, that one is definitely one not to miss for sure. I will be also talking about my top 4 favorite Enzo Castellari films. That's probably the next video I'm working on. So again, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know how you like this video. Let me know how you like Heroin Busters or Enzo Castellari as a director. I think he's definitely kind of like the most American, but very stylish director too. So, and I think you can certainly see some of that influence in pretty much all of his work in the 70s, but in particular, yeah, some of probably High Crime. I think it's the one that I would say is the most kind of inspired by that. Okay, so yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you liked it. I will see y'all next time. Cheers.